Welcome, everyone. My name is Natalie. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, but I'm also pretty pronoun flexible, so they, them, and theirs, as well as he, him, and his work really well for me. The reason that I share my pronouns is not actually because I usually use they or he, but because I think it's really important to make a space for people who might identify differently. I'm a person who never thought about having to do that. But as I meet more people who do have to do that, I try and make that space. We're here today to think about building community and becoming an ally, and what all of that means. And I've had a chance to meet with several folks so far in the day, and really think about, what does change mean? What does it look like to build community? What does it mean to not fit in and to be judged in those spaces? What I'd like to do is actually start out with an exercise. If folks will bear with me. If I could get everyone to stand. Oh, let me say the group agreements too. That is important. So as we're going through this, keeping in mind our group agreements for safety, we're not going to have a huge amount of interaction with the group, but there may be some space for some talk back from folks. And I want to make sure that we respect each other's voices, we respect possible differences in opinions. And we really come at this with compassion and consideration, because the last thing we want in this is to shut people's voices down. Can I see by raise of hands how many people want the folks in your school, your classmates, the people to your right and left and in front of you and behind you, to be successful in life and to have good, happy, healthy lives? Right? As I look around, I think that was most everyone. There are a few people who are slyly grinning and keeping their hands down, but I still think you want people to have a nice time. When we think about social justice action, I think it's about deciding what are the things and the causes that are meaningful to us and the people that we want to speak up for. So I'm going to ask, as I read these statements, if this is something that you identify as or within. If you can take a seat. All right. They came for the people of color, but they were always causing problems, so I said nothing. Go ahead and have a seat if you identify as a person of color, and you'll stay seated. They came for those with physical, developmental, or learning disabilities, but they were constantly holding back my class, so I said nothing. Go ahead and have a seat if you identify or identified as having any kind of a learning disability. ADD, I think, counts in that one. I'll put myself in there. They came for those people who were believed to be gay, lesbian, pansexual, or transgender. But those folks were always asking for special rights. So I said nothing. Go ahead and have a seat if you identify as one of those things. They came for the Muslims, Jews, Hindus, and other non-Christians. But I didn't believe in their gods, so I said nothing. They came for those people who were immigrants or non-US citizens. But I didn't think that they belonged here, so I said nothing. Go ahead and have a seat. They came for those who speak a language other than English in their homes. But they were always so hard to understand, so I said nothing. They came for those who leaned politically conservative, but their views differed from the liberal majority. So I said nothing. Go ahead and have a seat. They came for the activists, but their actions were always so disruptive. So I said nothing. Go ahead and have a seat if you identify as an activist. They came for the women and girls, but they were always so emotional. So I said nothing. They came for the teachers, who were always putting wild ideas in young people's heads. I thought that they needed to rein in some of their lessons, so I said nothing. They came for the young people. If only the youth had been more responsible, I would have spoken up. It's you and me. You can go ahead and have a seat. Finally, when you're that last person standing and they come, who's going to be there to speak up for you? How many people in the room, by raise of hands, have something that you care about? I hope everyone. That's great, and that's really important. How many people in the room care about something just because someone you know cares about it? Maybe you don't care so much, but like they care, and so I care. To me, that's the basis of starting to make connection with people and community with folks. When we're talking about engaging activism work and social change work, and engaging a really amazing place where all of us have a better chance of living happy, healthy lives, I think we have to start to think about the people around us. Did any of your friends get called out in a group during that exercise that you didn't belong to? People that you cared about, sat down? How do we try and speak up for them? When I was asked to do this and in our conversations around thinking about change, and I know y'all have been talking about this a lot, and some people think maybe even too much, like how much can we talk about social justice? How much do we keep having to talk about privilege? I talk about it all the time. I can't get enough of it. Maybe I should come to your school and I could just talk with you every day about social justice. I think that the reason that some folks, and this isn't everyone, the reason that some folks really deeply are talking about social justice every day has to do with identities. If you have privilege, how many folks know the concept of privilege around social identities? And I think it's something we talk about a lot, right? If you have something, some unearned thing that folks are giving you, and you didn't ask for it, but you're still getting it, does it make you a bad person? Seeing people's heads shake no. I don't see any yeses. The answer I would say is no, it doesn't make you a bad person. I actually believe that every single person in this room, every single person in this city, I think everyone is a good person. And maybe I think too highly of the world, but in the work that I do, that is what I believe. I believe that we care about each other, and I believe that we're good in that, even if we have privilege sometimes. Can I see by raise of hands from some brave everyone in the audience? How many of you have ever been made to feel bad about your privilege? Yeah, that's a lot of people. And I just realized now I'm getting the view of everyone and you all don't get to see each other. Like pretty much most everyone was raising their hand. Like we've been made to feel really, really, really badly about privilege. And what I'd like to argue is that maybe what we can do is think about how we can feel good about our privilege, but work to make it so that everyone can get some of it. I am not going to spend a ton of time on this, but a beginning piece of this conversation for me is thinking about why should I even care about privilege that I have. And what I think is that, you know, in our spaces, in our experiences, we all have stereotypes. Right? I'm going to try an activity with you. Are you ready? We're going to test your stereotype knowledge. Everyone get your voices ready. Say yes. All right, fantastic. So we're going to play a stereotype game that has to do with foods. All right? I'm going to pose a thing, and quickly, as a group, I want to see if we can get your answer uniformly thrown out into the world. Are you ready? All right. Asians eat... Okay. Latina folks eat... Black and African American folks eat. White folks eat. All right, so I want to point out a couple of things I noticed. I noticed that I was able to, for at least 3 of those identities, get a whole room of people to say the same thing. It wasn't everyone, but at least half of the room gave the same answers for all 3 of the first things I said. So when I said Asians eat, I heard a ton of people say rice. When I said Latina folks eat, I heard a ton of people say tacos. When I said black folks eat, I heard a lot of people say chicken or fried chicken. When I said white folks eat, I heard a whole room full of different answers. So 3 groups I was able to like quickly get this uniform, universal answer, but with the 3rd, it was like, oh, and it kept going for a long time, so we're like, is it this, is it that? That's about stereotypes, and that's about social power. Now, I'm going to be real specific here. I already asked this about privilege in general. Does it mean that because we can group Asians and black folks and Latino folks, and we can't group white people, does it mean that white people are bad? No. It does not mean that white people are bad. But what it does mean is that we live in a society in which some of us get stereotyped, and some of us don't, right? What it means is that white folks get to play all the roles on TV shows and movies. Right? White people play criminals on TV shows, white people play doctors on TV shows, white people play gardeners on TV shows. But if I did that same game around like what are the jobs that, or the roles that people can play, I think we would probably be able to identify, oh, well, you know, the Asian is the scientist or the doctor, and the black person is the, and the Latina person is the. So the question is, where did we learn all this crap? The internet? Where did you learn these things? Other people? I think I heard TV. Families. So we learn these things from a variety of different places. But everyone in this room, regardless of where you grew up, who you were friends with, what TV shows you watched, you were able to come up with the same thing. This, to me, is where the beginning of the problem is, and where we can start to make change. Because we can start to learn from different people, and we can start to break some of those ideas, but we hold some of those stereotypes still. Right? They're inside of us, even when we don't know they're there. It's unconscious sometimes, and sometimes that leads us to, and I'm going to move through the rest a little faster, that leads us to prejudge people. We prejudge people based on how they look. Right? When I walked up here and I started talking, you had prejudice about me. Does that make you bad people? No, it doesn't make you bad people. It just means that you've seen or learned about people who might look like me. Right? When we prejudge folks, sometimes we realize and sometimes we don't. When we don't realize the prejudgment we have, that's when we discriminate against people. We treat them differently. You can treat people good or bad. I had a guidance counselor in school that helped me choose a career and helped me get a scholarship to school and helped me do this amazing summer program. The problem was that it was all in mechanical aerospace engineering. I think it might have had something to do with the fact that I was Asian. He said my scores were really high in math and science, and they were. I'm a good student. But they were also really high in language literacy. And I really have always loved talking to people. I like talking to people. If I could do that for a living, it would be the best job ever. That's what I would tell my friends when I was young. Does it make my guidance counselor bad that that's the direction he pushed me? No, it doesn't make him bad. It just means that he didn't realize the prejudice that he had, and he made an action based on that prejudice. That's all it means. The other piece of this is social power, and he happened to have social power. He had a lot of control in my life, right? As an adult, as a teacher, I talked to some of the teachers this morning. We talked about all the power that teachers have. He had a ton of power because I didn't know the answers, and he did. He had power around gender. He had power around race. Did not make him a bad person, though. And that's really, really important for me in this conversation. And if I could go back and talk to him, I wouldn't demonize him, but I would have a conversation and ask, like, did you think about that thing? I'm just really curious. You were a really great guidance counselor in so many ways. You know, would you be interested in some feedback on something that could make you a little bit better? What if we always said things like that to each other instead of being mean? I think it would make some change, I hope. And it would help people treat each other better. Oppression, though, is different than discrimination. It's this power piece, and I want to zoom in on this. Because oppression has to do with privilege. And privilege is a couple of things. It's access to resources that increase your chances of living a happy, healthy life, and it's the ability to influence and control culture. As young people, how much ability do you have to control culture? Very little, barely, none. Those are some of the responses that I heard. You don't have a lot of power to control culture. I think that is an area where every single person in this room, that is a young person, obviously, and the adults excluded from this, but all of the students here can share a space of being targeted. And I think thinking about your target areas is really important. But what if you thought about your social power? So, can everyone in the room think about one area where you feel like maybe you have social power? I'll give you a few that I can see in the room, right? There's disability and ability, like physical ability. From what I saw folks come in and you were able to walk up the stairs and you're here and you could stand and you could sit. So that's privilege. I see men in the space, male folks. I see white folks. I see people that are leaning and getting close to your adult privilege. You're getting there, it's not quite there yet. I'm I'm guessing there are some Christians in the room. I'm guessing that there are, I'm seeing actually that there are a lot of typically sized people in the room, right? People who are thin. I'd like to talk and think more about the power spaces we have. So what if every single person here, instead of feeling bad about privilege you had, used your privilege to make change? I think that that would be huge. I think you could make a big, big impact on people, and a big impact on this larger social space. When we go back to that opening exercise, when you had a friend of yours, and maybe you didn't see them sit down because we weren't necessarily looking backwards, all of us, but in reading those questions and knowing that a friend of yours sat down in one of the areas, it likely meant that you possess privilege in that area. So how do we use that to make change and not feel bad? How can we step out of feeling guilty? I think some of the people that came before me went a little off track with their social justice and activism work, and it was really about making people feel bad, right? I gotta make you feel bad to make you want to help me. And that doesn't seem to work really well. I want to take a second, if I can, make sure I have, and have folks, can I have you turn to a person next to you? And I want you to think about, if you're oddly spaced, it can be 3 people, but groups of 2 or 3. And to that person next to you, share one area where you think you have privilege, and share one person or group of people you think you could help with it. Ideally, it's somebody that you know in your communities. All right, I'm going to give you like a minute and a half. All right. How did that feel, talking about how to help someone with privilege that you had? I see some thumbs up. Snaps or thumbs up if it felt good. That's the space that I'd like people to occupy. We got to stop making people feel bad about this. This is like the 3rd time I'm going to tell this story, and then I'm going to show you a little video clip. I've already told this twice today. Now everyone will have heard it. I was traveling, and some of you may know that they heard, it was said actually, that folks know me from the White Privilege Conference. And I was on my way home from that conference 2 years ago, talking to a guy at the airport because he had really cool tech stuff, and I do like tech stuff. And I was looking at his equipment that he had. So he told me about his job, and then he asked me what I did, and I said, well, I do anti-oppression training work, and I'm on my way home from the White Privilege Conference. And this guy was like, he was white, he was probably the age of many folks' parents, maybe a little bit older, and he looked at me and he said, what, are you going to tell me how bad I suck now? And that made me sad. It made me sad because it meant that other people had told him that. That because he was white and because he was male and because he was from a conservative part of the country, that he was a bad person is the message he had gotten. And so I said, no, that's not what I want to tell you. And we talked and really explored the space with each other. I had a beautiful conversation with this man for like 2 hours at the airport. How can we have more of that energy? Because right now we're living in a country where we are dividing. And we are splitting apart from each other. And it's trickling all the way down into our communities and into our schools and sometimes into our families. And that's not what I want for folks. I want for folks to get that privilege, to own that privilege. You know, you can be angry with the system, but still use that privilege for change and really work to be allies. I am going to play you a little video clip because some people say things better than I do. This is Francesca Ramsey, and she's got 5 points on being an ally that I would like to leave you with. Uh-oh. Oh? Oh? She has nothing for you. We can just watch the visuals and...
But you probably should listen so you know what to do first. Let's do.
There we go. All right, we'll put the stabbing yourself in the head with a screwdriver in context if you can hear what's happening. All right.
Imagine your friend is building a house and they ask you to help, but you've never built a house before. So it'd probably be a good idea for you to put on some protective gear and listen to the person in charge, otherwise someone's gonna get seriously hurt. Look, I'm helping! It's the exact same idea when it comes to being an ally. An ally is a person that wants to fight for the equality of a marginalized group that they're not a part of. We need your help building this house, but you probably should listen so you know what to do first. Let's do this. So here are my 5 tips for being a good ally. Understand your privilege. Now, a lot of people get hung up on the word privilege, so let me break it down for you nice and easy. Privilege does not mean that you are rich, that you've had an easy life, that everything's been handed to you and you've never had to struggle or work hard. All it means is that there are some things in life that you will not experience or ever have to think about just because of who you are. It's kind of like those horses that have those blinders on. They can see just fine. There's just a whole bunch of stuff on the side that they don't even know exists. So for example, there are currently 29 states where you can legally be fired for being gay, and there are 34 states where you can legally be fired for being trans. Now, as a straight cis woman, those are things that I don't have to ever think about if I don't want to. I'm not going to be fired because I'm straight, and I'm not going to be fired because I am cis. So it makes sense that before I can fight for the rights of others, I have to understand what rights I have and others don't. That's privilege. Listen and do your homework. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not possible for you to learn if you aren't willing to listen. So you gotta know when to zippa the lippa. I don't know. You get what I mean. But that's the thing that's so cool about social media. There are so many people sharing their stories all around the world and connecting with people that they normally would never get a chance to without the power of the internet. So do your homework. Start reading blogs, tweets, news articles, and stories so that you can get caught up on the issues that are important to the communities that you want to support. Speak up, but not over. If the Fight for Equality was a girl group, the ally wouldn't be the lead singer or the second lead singer. They'd be Michelle. An ally's job is to support. You want to make sure that you use your privilege and your voice to educate others, but make sure to do it in such a way that does not speak over the community members that you're trying to support or take credit for things that they are already saying. This isn't Mario Kart. Stay in your lane. Realize that you're going to make mistakes and apologize when you do. Nobody's perfect. Unlearning problematic things takes time and work, so you are bound to mess up and trip and fall. But don't worry, you can brush yourself off and get right back up. And back up! Just remember that it's not about your intent, it's about your impact. So when you get called out, make sure to listen, apologize, commit to changing your behavior, and move forward. Last but certainly not least, actually the most important thing on this list, is remember that ally is a verb. Saying you're an ally is not enough. You gotta do the work. 1 through 4.
Yeah, she goes into some other stuff there. She goes into some other stuff there that was it. So it's about being an ally, right? I'm gonna try and bring this all the way back to the beginning and connect my thoughts and theme. I don't ever want to be that person standing alone, or that community standing alone. And there are times when I forget to stand up for people, and I have to remind myself, right? I have to remind myself to take really proactive measures to consider disability, to take really proactive measures to think about the rights of young people and the elderly. That I have to really, really work to educate myself around folks who are non-Christian in the US. It's big, and it's a lot of work, and if you think about that identity wheel that you did, you don't have to think about some of it if you have privilege. But I don't want to be left standing alone, because you can have all the privilege in the world. And you know, I think folks might be familiar with the "They Came for Me" poem. You know, that was written about the Holocaust and about the different groups of people that were came for. Is that the right tense? And you lose the people who might speak up for you when you don't speak up for those around you. I want to do a little exercise about voice and about community. It's the way we're going to wrap up today. No. Are we playing? Is it doing anything? There we go. All right. Some of you may have seen this before, participated in this before. This is my guess. I would like you to do what I'm doing if I'm standing in front of you, and continue doing it. I need to exercise more. Sorry, feedback. How many folks have done that activity before? So I hope you notice between the visual and the sounds, if you haven't done it before, it's like a storm, right? And in this, every single drop of rain is part of that storm and is necessary to make it happen. And it takes every single one of us and our energies to engage and really make this change. I hope folks can carry that with them forward. And I look forward to hearing where your community goes. I think it can be really an amazing place. But it starts with every single one of you here today. Thank you so much.